Go on then, Logan. I'm glad that John hasn't said either of my two yet, so I've still got a clean sweep here. But what are you going to say? And while you say it, I'm going to grab copies of mine to show to the camera, because I feel far less guilty about being rude to you and walking away from the screen while you're talking than I do with John.
Thanks, Geoff. I appreciate it. This feels like an unfair question. Only two. I was sort of like, can I have 13 or something? You know. I think the first book that jumps into my mind is The Life and Diary of Robert Murray McShane. That book I found impacted me so hugely. I think I took it on holiday one year and I read it through, and it so impacted me that I just started from the beginning again and read it through again. And I think I've read it for 4 or 5 times now. And after reading it, I think 3 times, I discovered that the guy who wrote it, Andrew Bonar, has the same thing written by his daughter, Margaret. So I got that. I think it's Margaret or Marjorie, can't remember. Got that and read that. And that equally just dumbfounded me. And I think specifically Bonar actually almost impacted me more than McShane, in the sense that he's an incredible model of a minister. And the reason I say that is just his level of humility. You know, like you read him and he's like, he's just talking about revival. He sees revival and he says, oh, the reason we don't have revival in town is that I'm prayerless. And you flick back 2 pages and there he was in the morning praying for 2 hours, you know, and you're like, just the level of humility and his stress upon the stuff that really, really mattered. So I'm going to count them as one because I'm a cheater. The other book, just for a more modern one that really impacted me, was a really, really simple book, which came out of a series of sermons by Sinclair Ferguson and Derek Thomas called Ichthus. I read that and I was just like, man, it's so basic and so simple, yet absolutely jam-packed with glorious biblical truth. So I bought 10 copies of it from the banner and I read it with my elders and they loved it. And so then I think my mum took a copy, and then I got some copies for other people, and every person that's read it has said to me, that book is absolutely gold. So that for me, I think, is the #1 book I'd recommend anyone to read outside of the Bible, just because it gives such a beautiful introduction to the person and the work of Christ.
That's really cool. I'm still, nobody said mine yet, so I'm chuffed about that, because I still get to. I found a copy of Lloyd Jones' Authority, although I'm going to keep my thumb over where it says IVF for their publishing. No one, not plugging them today. And then I also grabbed, so talking about getting into the Puritans, like that's what a Puritan paperback looks like for anybody who hasn't seen one before. They're not massive, they're not that intimidating, but even if that is too intimidating, then a pocket Puritan is even smaller and would literally fit into your pocket. Or I reckon an even easier place to start with the Puritans would be this book called Voices from the Past by Richard Rushing, where he just takes like little snippets, a daily devotional, taking some quotes from the Puritans, and that's a really nice place to start. And it looks far more impressive on your bookshelf than the other two, which are paperbacks. I'm going to cheat as well, Logan. I'm going to have 3. You were talking about.
Can I just?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Just say there's actually 2 volumes of Voices from the Past, so you can go through for 2 years doing daily devotionals from Voices from the Past. So there you go. So if you haven't got the other volume, you need to let me know.
Yeah, I haven't got the other volume, but maybe by the time I've got and read that one, another one will be coming out. Voices from the Pastor, and so I've got 3, and I've got to mention them all. This one biographically is fantastic, called Fair Sunshine, about the Scottish Covenanters. It'll make you cry, like it's heartbreaking, but wonderful, incredible. Talking about things produced in times of trial and suffering and challenge. Just incredible, looking at what men of God were willing to suffer for the sake of the gospel. That's a fantastic book. And none of my books are intimidating. Like I've picked pretty slim ones. This one was given to me by a pastor friend called Chris Rogers when I lived with him for a while in Carmarthen. It's a book called Redemption Accomplished and Applied by John Murray. And I'd say to anybody who wants a bit of a challenge, and if you want to push yourself a bit, this book is a good one to push yourself with, because not only is it just full of treasure and it's so rich and so good for the soul, it does make you work for a little bit. And I was really grateful that Chris gave me his copy, in which he's underlined all the difficult words and then put a little definition next to it beforehand. So I could read through and know exactly what the words were that Murray was using. But again, a real gospel man, a beautiful, beautiful book. But my number one is probably the thinnest out of those. And this book had a massive impact on me early on in my ministry, just before I went into the ministry, and just really shaped my preaching more than any other book apart from the Bible, I'd say. And that's this book called Today's Gospel by Walter Chantry. It's not big, it's not intimidating, it's easy to read. It's just him dealing with how Jesus approached the rich young ruler, and boy, is it a good book. It's so challenging to how we approach preaching the gospel. And I couldn't recommend that more highly to anybody who wanted to read it. And if anybody's watching this who lives relatively near to Wyndham, I think every book that's been mentioned apart from two so far, they're in this room with me somewhere, and you'd be more than welcome to borrow them. So if anybody wants to borrow a book and they live nearby, you're more than welcome to.
All 5 people.
Yeah, all 5 people who live in Wyndham are welcome to come and borrow those.
Just in this discussion, I do want to plug a series of books still, I think, being published or created at the moment by the Banner, and that's their mini Banner book series, mini guide series. So I started purchasing these and giving them out at Profession of Faiths and stuff like that, giving them to new members of the church. They've been really appreciated. They're based, and all they are is they're taking key aspects of our faith, things like church, sacraments, stuff like that, really important aspects, and giving them to us in a really small, easy way to understand. So I would highly recommend the mini Banner book series. They're excellent as well.
There's probably one more thing that's worth mentioning. We're doing John's work for him here. John's going to go out and buy a load of Banner books after this, after all these great recommendations that he's been. But
I'll show you my bookshelves. Look, I think I've got a few there.
That's just one shelf and a load of mirrors, I think.
No, it's just one shelf. The rest of the walls are lined as well.
Yeah, that's good. On the Banner of Truth website, there's a series of articles that Jeff Thomas did called The Book That, I think is the name of the titles, where he's gone around and he's interviewed different people, and 3 people at a time asked, what are the books that have had a big influence on you? And those articles are really helpful as a place to start. I don't think they're exclusively Banner books, but mostly Banner books that different ministers, different people have said, this book had a really profound impact on me. And there's just a little blurb. I got to do one of those interviews, so if you really want to, you can see what I said in more detail. But it's just a really helpful way of just seeing the names of these books, and some of them come up again and again, but also have a little description of why that book was so important to somebody.
Good. Well, you mentioned a book earlier, I think, Geoff, You Must Read. You said I wasn't allowed to talk about that, I think.
Yeah, you go for it.
We'll talk about that. So there is a book we do called You Must Read.
See if I can find that.
And it's really a series of personal testimonies. A lot of people would know some of the folks who have written in that book. And it's the books that have, the books that have impacted them in their ministry. So again, if you're not sure where to start with things and you want some recommendations, that's a book you could read, and you get to some extent, a bit of a summary of the book that they're talking about, but also a recommendation, a sense of different books. So that can be a helpful book.
I thought it was quite handy. I remember reading through it, and then as I read, that's the one. As I read through it, I flicked back to the contents and then put stars under the ones I've got and which ones look like, oh, I want to get this now. I want to get this maybe a bit later, So it's really helpful little guide to have on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
So just before we wrap up, because time's pressing on and I'm sure you've got work to do and we've got beds to get to, why don't you tell us, how can people sort of get stuff from Banner? Tell us a little bit about the Banner, the magazine, how they might get connected with that. Also ministers' conferences, just general blurb about how people might benefit from the Banner.
Yeah, I guess the place to go for information would be the website. So banneroftruth.org. There's, all of our books are on there. There's information about our books. We post articles onto the website as well. So again, there's helpful articles in there. You can go into the back the back sort of list of articles too. So if you want to find the things that Geoff was mentioning on the website and go and search for those. Again, the website would have information on conferences. You can subscribe to the magazine. The magazine is a subscription-based magazine. Again, you can do that from the website. So you can buy books from the website. You can subscribe to the magazine from the website. The other thing to do is to join the mailing list. So again, you can do that from the website. Right at the bottom, there's a little bit about join the mailing list. We try not to bombard people with emails, but typically we would email out to tell people about new books we're doing. We would email out to give people details of conferences and so on. So the email list is a place to go, and the website's a place to go for information. You can always contact us directly, of course. We will try and help if anybody contacts us with any questions or what have you. And then, of course, I mean, we're on social media, so there's lots of stuff goes out on sort of Twitter and Facebook, and we post on Instagram, so you can find us there and follow us there if you want. But the website is the place where most of the information, if you're looking for particular information, would be found. On the website, one of the things that we've tried to do with our books is to put enough information on there that you can get a good understanding of what's in the book. So most of the books will have a look inside feature, so you can click onto that. It'll show you maybe half a dozen or a dozen pages of what's inside the book, so you can get a feel for the writing style and so on, as well as the contents. Pretty much every book on the homepage of the book will have a contents section too, so you can expand. There's a little thing that says contents, and a little down arrow on the website. Click on that, it'll expand out, show you what the table of contents is for the book. So there's quite a lot of information on the website on individual books, which I think just helps people to understand what it is, what's in the book. There's a lot of information on authors too, so there are author pages for people. So if you want to know, for instance, oh, Geoff's talking about Redemption Accomplished and Applied. Who was that by again? Oh, John Murray. Oh, who was he? Find out about him. Well, go to the author page on the website, and it'll tell you a bit about John Murray, who he was when he lived, where he ministered, and so on. So there's quite a lot of information on the website, and that would be the place to sort of direct people.
So just one last question. You talked about the book fund. Is that by contribution? Do you use your profits for that? How does that work?
Yeah, both, I guess. So two things. When I look at what we publish, we don't drive our publishing decisions based on financial considerations, in the sense that we don't look at a book and say, will this book make us money or will this book not? And if the answer to the question is this book won't make us money, well, then we don't publish it. That's not the way we view things. We look at things and say, is this book a book that needs to be published? And if it is, we'll publish it, even if we feel that the market for it is quite small. So there are things that we keep in print, and we do tend to keep things in print long term. Again, going back to earlier in our conversation about the short life of a book, that's not banner. We've still got things in print today that we first put into print in 1957 when we first started. So they've been around for 65 years. So I tend to look at it and say, well, in our list, we've got some books that sell really, really well and obviously generate profitability in that sense. And we've got other books that don't. And the profits from the books that sell well subsidize the fact that we've got stuff that we just keep in print because we believe it needs to be in print. And in a sense, a similar thing happens with the book fund. So, overall, if people are buying banner books from us, then the profitability for those books helps to support two things. It helps to support the books that we think need to be in print, that aren't necessarily profitable ventures in and of themselves. And it also helps support the book fund, where we're giving books away to people. So anything that we're doing in terms of selling books helps to support the book fund. But we do also have people who donate to the book fund. So again, that can be done on the website. There is the ability to donate from the website. But people also just send us donations in for the book fund. I've been amazed. I've been at the banner for coming up 23 years now. And I would have to say that God has provided in a remarkable way for the book fund. I think it's true to say that in all my time here, and my understanding is my predecessor, who was at the Banner for 20 odd years, he would say the same too. I don't think we've ever had a time when somebody has contacted us and asked us for help through the book fund where we've not been able to do it for financial reasons. And there may sometimes be other reasons why we don't. But certainly not financial. God has always provided the funds to be able to send things out through the book fund. And we're tremendously grateful for that. And the book fund has helped a lot of people over the years. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Hey, John, we've really appreciated your time, and thank you for talking to us. I think there's one question that I'd just love to ask really quickly, because I think everybody who's ever bought Banner books has probably asked this question at some point. They're some of the most beautiful books that you can buy. The hardbacks are cloth bound. They look fantastic. So why do you smother them in the most hideous dust jackets? And I mean, to be fair, you've upped your game in the last 10 years or so. I think things have improved massively, but the 60s and the 70s, were they ever cool, or was that the point?
They were cool. That's a scurrilous accusation. It really is. They were cool. I tell you, we have some pictures upstairs on the wall in our conference room where we collected together some of the old covers and sort of did an arrangement and then printed them out in a sort of a poster-sized picture. And they're really cool. Even today, they're really cool. So, yeah, no. You have to bear in mind, Geoff, that, for instance, some of those books you were holding up earlier, those are old covers. They show your age, if I'm allowed to say that as an older person, because I'm a bit older than you, but they show your age. So, yeah, we do new covers on things. And I'd like to think that these days, covers on paperbacks and dust jackets are, reasonably good.
Yeah, they are.
We've been publishing for 65 years. And so, you can pick up a book from 30, 40 years ago, and yeah, styles have changed. And we wouldn't necessarily put the same cover on the book today that we would have done 40 years ago. So
these are beautiful. They look fantastic. Voice from the Past, John Knox, there's some other more recent stuff, and it looks great. I'm just pulling your leg. I've always wondered that some of those old Lloyd Jones covers, Ephesians and Romans, they perhaps haven't aged as well as some of the other stuff, but they makes them easier to spot when you're looking for them, especially in secondhand.
You mean like this, Geoff?
It's gorgeous though, isn't it? Look at those browns.
Brown and orange. Like, you can't beat brown and orange.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't do that today, but interestingly, there is an interesting point to that, and that is that sometimes we don't change a cover because it actually has such a sort of a iconic recognizability to it.
Yeah.
And so for instance, one of the books that just have a quick, if I've got one handy.
I'm worried there's going to be some 100-year-old Christian graphic designer somewhere weeping into his Horlicks listening to this.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I worked so hard on those browns.
Okay, so this is a book that is probably our biggest selling book, and it's this, Valley of Vision.
I'm surprised that one hasn't been mentioned yet.
Okay. Now, is that a cover that I would put on that book if we did it today? I don't think so. Now that actually is slightly updated to what it was. So we've tweaked the cover a little bit. So the font and so on and the text is a little bit different, and there's a bit of a border in. So, we've tweaked it, but we talked about putting a new cover on that book. But the problem is it's got such recognizability. If you change the cover, sometimes it damages the book actually, because it's so well recognized. There are thousands upon thousands of people around the world. If you show them that, they go, oh, yeah, we know exactly what that is. That's Valley of Vision. That's a great book. I've read it. I've bought 15 copies of it because I keep reading it and wearing it out and scribbling all through it and all the rest of it. So yeah, there is sometimes, we have to take a measured view of these things and say, look, hey, that is such a recognizable cover.
Yeah,
we can't change that. Even though if we did that book today, we certainly wouldn't put that cover on it. It would be a different cover we would put on.
If someone says Lloyd Jones on Romans or the works of John Owen or John Owen on Hebrews, it immediately comes to mind what it looks like, doesn't it? You know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's great.
Sure. Yeah.
John, we really do appreciate your time. It's been great to talk to you. As Logan said right at the start, or before we even started, I owe a huge debt to Banner, not your work, the work of the giants whose shoulders that you stand on, and Logan would be the same, and all of us reform pastors around the world probably say the same. But we're really grateful to have you on. We hope that some of our listeners will have benefited from it too, and you might have a bit of a passion, a bit of a fire to read some stuff that Banner puts out. We'll try and put links to the Banner of Truth website, and maybe even those articles, the article series that Geoff Thomas did on the book that, with the interviews asking people about the books that they've enjoyed the most. But yeah, we just say thank you to John and recommend to everybody at home, get your hands on something Banner, because it's bound to be good.